Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Masters of Self University podcast. I'm your host, Ellie Lee.
And I'm your host, Morley.
And today we are joined by mystical life coach Emily Armstrong, everybody. Yeah.
Hi.
Welcome, Emily.
How are you?
So well. Yeah, survived January. Woohoo.
Woo!
Doing well. Glad to be here.
Spicy January in 2024.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good to see you guys at the end of the month. We made it.
And yeah, hooray for everyone else that did too. It's it's definitely, that is exactly the word, Danny. It's a spicy month. It has been
spicy.
Yeah, Year of the Dragon.
Year of the Dragon.
Certainly living up to it.
I don't know about you both, but 2023 was very challenging for myself. And it felt like it's prepared me for what's going to be a turbulent year. And coming into January, it's like, oh, it's still really challenging, but I feel like I'm prepared for it because of everything that I had to go through in 2023. I don't know. Do you both kind of like fall into that same category?
Yes and no. I think mine's shifted a little bit. It's still intense, but it's different because I'm probably doing, can I even say it like this, more of the human stuff this year. So I'm doing some of the kind of grown-up bits around having multiple streams of work all kicking off in January and running through to the middle of the year. So lots of demands on my time, my effort, and a lot of my work's in development. And so there's a lot going on with that. I'm buying a house. I am, I'm stepping up with some of my personal development stuff that's taking quite a lot of my time. So there's just quite a lot of the human-y bits, and it's quite nice because it really, for me, kind of intersects well with the 8 year, the fact that it's all about moving into up-leveling a little bit more as in terms of kind of some of the, how do you do this from an enlightened perspective? Like, how do you do the human stuff? How does that work? Like from this perspective? Because most of what I've done today and being a life past 7 as well has been about integrating the mystical and bringing in more of my intuitive gifts and psychic gifts. And that's what last year was largely about. And that was a rough ride. It still continues on, but it's shifted a little bit into maybe more of a balance, actually. And I'm being asked to do a lot as just a person in this world doing stuff, Does that make any sense?
Feel free to go deeper.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's still quite a lot in terms of my learning. So on the mystical front, I've massively up-leveled in my understanding of energetic boundaries. That is something I've started really, really focusing on. The whole of January there and abouts has been, how do I firm them up to ensure that I am not just an open vessel for anything to come along, which has been an ongoing challenge for me to manage. So I've been really very much the way of responsibility in educating myself around how to do that, alongside doing, a lot of this work, engaging with people all the time, different energies all the time, making sure that I'm being responsible. And, using some of the work we've already learned with Masters of Self University, and then just also adding to that through MSU, through other sources too. So there's, that's one element of it. And that's requiring quite a lot of me, and requiring quite a lot of me showing up consistently in that regard as well. So making sure I'm doing my clearings, and I'm making sure I'm putting some adequate protections in place and other things like that, because being HSP and being someone that is very able to take on energies, that's become something really important. So that's been a huge deal for January. And and part of what I wanted to talk about today as well is also I've been given a number of instructions through, various connections with my guides, who I've started at the end of 2023 really connecting with, and it continues. And trying to understand the messages I'm receiving as well, because it's not just getting them, it's also translating them and understanding what they actually mean. And I got 3 very clear messages with a collection of instructions essentially as to what I need to do this year. So there's some really interesting things, some fairly random things, and some really challenging things, and some things I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But that's my, it's almost like an initiation, those things are part of my, they're going to support me alongside doing this work, which is always my middle ground. This is kind of my central column, if you like, that doing this work with MSU, doing it by myself now that I've had, the coach training for some time, keeping that consistent, but all the supportive stuff around the edges also helps to up-level your consciousness, and that's what I'm really focused on. That's number one for me. So there's a few things I need to do this year. There are 10 things. I have them written on my wall. I have to keep consulting them because my program of wanting to forget keeps kicking in, so they haven't quite stuck around yet. So they're now on various post-its on my wall to just keep reminding me every day. Keep doing those things. It's good fun.
And this directive, does it come through like a conversation with your guides, or is it little hints and little clues that you got throughout the year?
Yeah, I haven't got to the point yet where I can have like a fluid conversation. So it's mostly bits here and there that come through, and sometimes I get it's not even a conversation, it's just an end-to-end understanding of the full instruction. There's no words. It is just like it's been added to my brain, if that makes any sense. So the whole thing just comes in as a complete piece, and then I just know it, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know that before, and then it's just appeared as a whole understanding, if you like. So I'm attributing that to the knowing Claire. There are many different Claires, and that one is just where it kind of pops into my head, and all of a sudden I've got like a very detailed understanding of something, which is the most helpful, I have to say, of all of them. But otherwise they come in kind of drips and drabs, and I have to very intentionally tune in to try and receive that stuff. It's not generally just hitting me out of the blue. I've become better disciplined in being able to sit and tune in and be patient as well.
So cool.
Yeah, so cool.
Yeah, it can be so frustrating as well. There is 2 sides to every coin, and it's both
absolutely
very important.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know that interpreting in itself is an entire skill that you have to hone in to when you receive the message, to interpret them, to understand what they mean.
Yeah. It is a skill. Exactly. It's a skill set, and there's no there's no one teacher that will give you, this is exactly how you do it, and this is exactly how it's. You have to become your own teacher in understanding, and piecing together. This is one of the great things about being a HSP as well, is the ability to be conceptual and connect dots. There's a lot of things, even though I have some programs of forgetting, everything's in the recesses. So if there are things that tally together, I bring them together, and they form, if you like, a complete understanding sometimes. So I sort of feel a bit like I'm my own teacher in that regard, in that I'm trying to keep all the little things stockpiled until they eventually, in the light of some new information, make sense, if that makes sense to say.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. But it is
And
very cool.
And of those directives, one of them, which we're going to want to talk about today, is veganism, correct?
Veganism, yes, it is. Full stop. Yeah, it is. It is one of the 10 that I did kind of look up and go, oh no. I'll be really honest. As someone who was, with the turn of this year, still eating a full range of everything, including meat and fish and eggs and cheese and all those kinds of things. I was in some resistance to that particular instruction, even though, again, I'll be honest, I've known for some years that was probably coming. That's one of the inner knowings. And I remember some time ago even messaging Rachel and being like, oh no, I think this is going to happen. This was about 2 years ago when we first really started the work. I think that's coming. And I actually have had many conversations with my husband saying, oh, I better enjoy this now, because I had a feeling it was coming, but then it was a very clear instruction. It's now, and it needs to be done by June. And so that was very specific. So I have now gotten to full vegetarianism, if you can call it that. And that was actually relatively straightforward. Overnight, I just stopped liking the smell and taste of meat immediately. I was like, oh, I don't like this. And I'm not smelling it in the same way as I used to, literally overnight. And it keeps happening with different foods. So it's now happened with eggs as well, which I eat a lot of, or did at least eat a lot of eggs. So I can't stomach them now. And it's really, really interesting. And I'm a little grateful actually as well, because it makes it easier for me. And I see that as some support coming in, that actually I'm being turned off some of these foods to make that transition easier as I adjust. Because, for me, it's not a small lifestyle change. It's quite a thorough overhaul of how I eat currently. So it's, I'm grateful to being able to have this time to make that transition. And, and also my mental programs are like, what am I going to eat? Well, plenty, as it turns out. There are.
Yeah.
It's more for me. I'm at the phase now. I'd love to hear about, your journey, Ellie, because you're much further into it than me. And, I'm still trying to figure out how to do meals, eating whole foods and putting them together, not a problem, but actually building it in so that it doesn't feel like I'm eating vegan. Does that make sense? Like I'm just eating a normal balanced diet kind of thing. I don't want it to be, so yeah, I'd love to hear what you want to share about it, Ellie, as well. So you have much more experience than I do with it further down the journey.
Yeah, me and Danny have had lots of conversations about this topic. Back in 2013, I read a book on factory farming, and that was it. I read it and I was like, I'm never touching meat again in my life. And I know that I'll get to a place I'm like you, where like, the downloads are coming, the psychic hits or whatever, everything's coming. But for me, when I look back on my life, I know when my soul pushes me to do something, I'm a 100% in. I'm so passionate. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And I just, no pun intended, went cold turkey one day after I read that book. And I was like, meat just completely changed to me. Like in Korean culture, we eat so much barbecue. It's beef, ribs, pork. And that was my entire life. And then one day I was like, I can never eat another animal again in my life. And so I did that for a few years. And then I was like looking into the dairy industry and I was like, oh, can't do that either. So I completely cut out dairy, and then the eggs and everything went with it. So I've been vegan for a long time. But then when I met Danny 2 years ago, he and I got into a lot of really hard conversations about, I was one of those angry vegans. I was so angry at the world for eating animals. How could they not know? And all of these things. And I realized that I was stuck in dogma. And also I was just spewing out a lot of darkness outside of me. And I got off my antidepressants and my body went into just complete mayhem. And so I realized I needed to cut out a lot of soy and gluten and all that stuff. And so I reintroduced fish back into my diet a year ago. And I was just telling Dan the other day, my soul is like, we're out again. So I'm really gonna go full on like I used to. And it was a big lesson for me to learn and also understand, not just because it's vegan doesn't mean it's healthy. And I'm like you, where I just want to get down to the basics and just really eat whole organic foods and just listen to my body and see what it likes and what it wants. But yeah, that whole journey has been really big for me. I'm also a really big animal lover, and that was the driving force for me to really stop. And Danny will tell you, I cry so much over them, and cry over how we treat them and what we do. And I think it's one thing to get meat from regenerative farming and all of these things, but the crux of everyone's meat comes from these grocery stores that come from factory farming. These animals are not raised in a way that they are honored at all. And so I have a huge problem with that morally and ethically. And so that's been my journey. So it's been a long time since I've touched meat, since 2013. So, and everyone's always like, do you think I'm like, that's done. That chapter is closed for me. And then it's also been interesting, I think, to meet Danny, who at the beginning of our relationship, I remember, Danny, the first time I ever met you, I went on your Instagram story and you were cooking up 2 steaks. And I was like, oh, okay. Right. there was the judgment, right? There was the judgment. But I think he's opened my eyes to understanding deeper into a lot of things, and I for him as well. But yeah, it's still something that I'm really passionate about. It's while I'm here on earth, I don't need to do that. I can find other foods to complete my diet without the meat thing. And honestly, it gets easier. Once you start realizing what it the taste and everything and the smell, it just becomes so normal so fast that you'll start to view all of it very differently.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. So I prior to this have been vegetarian for a couple of years. I should say pescatarian, so still eating fish, so no meat. And I didn't have so much of an issue with cutting that out. That felt like a good thing at the time. I think our body, from many of the things I've read and whatnot, goes in and out of phases of wanting, not wanting. And when I was struggling with being unwell with mold, so that biotoxin situation I had last year, I went back to having meat again. And I couldn't, figure out whether or not my body really needed it. I think, it probably was a nutrient thing because I was so deficient because of the toxicity, or whether there was mold brings a slightly lower vibration into your body, and whether or not there was something in that too. But I couldn't really tell at the time. It was just a kind of hunch I had that it might be a bit of both. But switching back to not eating meat again, even though obviously it started not smelling right, not tasting particularly good, overnight pretty much, I didn't struggle so much with that mentally because I'd done it before, so I knew I could do it. But initially there is that kind of barrier of oh, is this going to be hard work? Am I going to starve? That kind of thing. It's very much a real thing. And one of the things I actually did was I opened, we have a double cupboard full of stuff. It's one of our main food cupboards. And I opened the cupboards and I was like, right, what in this cupboard is vegan? And it was basically 80% of the cupboard. It was most of it. And I was like, okay, I think this is going to be all right. It's a bit of coaching of myself of just actually, we need to get a little grip on this. And then, of course, doing some of the work with my inner children that are obviously the ones that are a little bit worried about this. I can remember falling asleep very hungry as a kid sometimes, and that being a thing. So I can feel some of those little things being triggered, and it's not about the veganism, it's about something else, so just feeling my way through it a little bit. But there is, it's definitely something I think once I've got the gist of it and in a bit of a rhythm, and looked up a few recipes, I still need to do that, but once I'm in a rhythm with that, I think it will be, it's a no-brainer probably. I think it's probably going to be just oh, now that's just the way it is, you know.
I'll send you
much
some
like-
recipes and stuff.
Yeah, please send me some recipes. That'll be so cool. Thank you. I've seen some of yours on Instagram. I'm just like, they look so good. Particular like pasta, and I don't eat pasta because I'm gluten-free as well.
Yeah.
And so it's another thing in my mind, just like, and now we can't have any bread either, and everyone eats bread as a vegan. But I've managed to find plenty of gluten-free breads, and there's pastas and all sorts of stuff. And you know, I'm like, oh, maybe I could be less rigid with my diet around that stuff and invite some of that in and see if that might form a part of my diet. It's just actually quite interesting to think of it in terms of being a bit more creative and maybe a bit more expansive, even in that small way. I think it can be exciting, but yeah, it's just meeting some of those programs as they come up that are, you know, wanting to be barriers to some of this. Ultimately, I think it's a great thing. And I have watched many of the documentaries. The one about fish, there's a really famous one about fish. I forget the title of it now. I think it's on Netflix, but
Blackfish, that one?
Yeah. So there's some biggies. There's some really big documentaries that are, you know, very popular and well known. And I would rather know some of that. And yes, many of them are the extreme end of things. And all my meat for years and years now has been from a regenerative farm, you know, that's we buy from one place. But you're right, it's a bigger issue than just buying meat from a place that is treating the animals and the soil correctly as well. So, you know, it's the soil too and how that's impacted. You know, you start looking at some of the documentaries around soil and you're like, oh my goodness me, you know, we're in trouble. That's an interesting one to fit into. So in the round, I think it's the wisest choice for me personally, and I think it will be for a lot of other people. I can see this being a calling of many people if they're open to hearing it as well, but equally not. You know, my husband is not doing this. He doesn't have a spiritual call for it, and he has, you know, no qualms either side. He's just like, this is right for my body and that's right for your body and that's okay. And I'm like, yeah, with you. My daughter can choose. She can choose what she wants to eat. I think that's, you know, some of what you were saying earlier about tuning into your body. What does your body need? You know, what's it moving towards, what's it moving away from is a really important piece of being self-empowered. You know, what this work is all about as well. It's tuning into yourself, being connected to yourself, growing your intuition in whatever regard, you know, even intuitive eating. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really easy, especially when you haven't done the work we do at MSU, to fall into the duality of, well, this is the right thing and this is the wrong thing. And I was here for a long time, especially when it comes to diet, and just trying to figure out, well, what is the right diet? And as you mentioned, Emily, like arriving at that place that, oh, everyone's human needs are going to be slightly individual to them. And there is no necessarily like right or wrong way you can eat. It's more about like you tap into yourself, like what do you need? And maybe one day in the future, all of humanity will be quote unquote vegan or plant-based, however you want to label it. And maybe not. I have a feeling everyone will, based on what I've learned and understood, but that isn't today. And that's a long way in the future. Like that's not something we have to worry about. What I've learned is when I tap into myself and feel into what I need, that's the only important thing. Like I can go in my mind and say, well, I should be vegan, or I should eat meat, or I should be carnivore, or I should eat this way, I should be gluten-free. But what is my body actually asking of me? When I eat the gluten, do I have a negative reaction, right? Can I feel that my body's saying, that hurt me? Okay, well, maybe not eat that. And this has been this constant evolution process for me, and especially as Ellie mentioned, when we first started dating, and as you mentioned, Emily, like I was really diving deep into understanding how to heal from like chronic mold, and that's something I'm still working through right now. And it's been a long journey, and at the time everything was saying basically super clean diet, and high quality ingredients. Like that's what it's about. It's about bringing life into your body. And so much of the food, whether you want to say it's carnivore, vegan, whatever you want to label it, is so processed and so removed from actual food and nutrition that of course it's going to continuously like kill the inside. And what I've found within my journey is the more that I do this work and elevate and alchemize, the part of me that might have needed more protein or meat, however you want to look at it, that's slowly dwindling away. And part of that was this belief as a man that I had to look a certain way in order to be like manly or be worthy or be adequate, right? And I think so many men are chasing a certain physique. And with that, the information that's pumped to them by the certain circles and community is, well, to look this way, you've got to consume this amount of protein. And to get that protein, you need this amount of animals in your body or whatever. And I'm seeing on social media that there is people that are saying, hey, this might not be the case. And the more that I do the healing work, I still want my body to be healthy. I would love it to be as muscular as it can, but it's not as much a priority as my own evolution as a soul. And when I tap into myself, that conversation about what my body wants versus what my ego wants me to be is very different. And the more that we all start walking that path, I can see that sort of changing. And that's not to say anyone's right or wrong. Well, this is what we're here to choose, is to like, oh, what life do we want to create? And I feel like through this work, you get more in touch with who you are and then start making decisions from that place. And that changes things.
Yeah, totally. I'm with you. It is very much an individual journey. And just like there are, I mean, countless numbers of supportive things out there and ways to structure your life, veganism or not, or anything else, pescatarianism, all the isms are just, one of the many different options of the countless options of things to create and curate your life and make it what's right for you. And you're right, there is the added lens. We have the benefit of being able to see there is an ego choice involved, and much of the ego is also, driven by fears as well, so some of the choices are out of fears, whether it's going one way or the other way or somewhere in the middle. It's really being able to look at what's filtering my decision. And
yes.
How pure is it, me and my soul and my body, which are two, they're intertwined, but they are two different things with different needs and ideas about things. From what I've experienced, there are different needs of the body versus the soul, and ideals maybe is a better word to use. But where's the balance is also another thing. If there are some underlying fears shaping some of my decisions and the way in which I, also judge others and the benchmark I hold others to, well, it's my responsibility to look at that first and heal that so I can be clearer, and the way of, well, crikey, true. I mean, there's so many. There's the way of comes forward predominantly with myself and feel true to the decisions I'm making, and in many conversations with many different people with different eating habits, different preferences, crikey, the number of people with allergies now as well. My daughter's school, almost a third of the class have some kind of allergy, not intolerance, proper allergy. Many of the kids have EpiPens. It's just a very interesting thing. And that's not the only school, it's a real growing issue that there are certain children coming through for whatever reason, which I will definitely not get into, but many, many reasons are ultimately the same outcome, that there is just a very high ratio of kids with allergies now. So that's part of, I think, when you were talking, Danny, about this, evolution, which I agree with you, I think that's where it's probably going to go. As to when, I don't know, but it's not today. But I think there are a number of different things coming in to change, to allow the younger generation, I mean like the real young right now, to question and to think differently, and their parents to also think differently about what they're consuming, what impact that is maybe having. There are some parents, my daughter is friends with their friends, and I've spoken to many of them, and they would never have questioned their diets for one moment. They eat what their parents ate. They've always had the same diet until their kid shows up with an allergy, and they have to rethink everything. And it's painful for a while, and then it's just normal. And, it might mean that there's no dairy in the house, full stop, so it's interesting to kind of see how that evolution might come about with up-leveling our consciousness, but also just things materializing to force those kinds of conversations and a rethink. Yeah, it's just interesting.
Yeah, back in I believe it was 2019, the documentary Game Changers came out, and I'm not here to argue for or against that documentary. That's not what this podcast is about, but it ignited something within me, something that I've always felt, and this idea that I was like, whoa, maybe I could be vegan. I would like the idea. I loved. It's like to not harm any animals. And like, wow. Like I remember years before watching a documentary, I forget the name, and it was brutal. Some of the scenes that I was watching about factory farming, it was bringing all of that back up again, and I could feel in my heart, I was like, this feels so right to me. But then I tried it for 30 days, and I only made it just over 3 weeks. I had so much bad gas, like so much bloating. It was so uncomfortable that I couldn't continue doing it. It was like, it was not fair to be at work with me because of how much of a smell was coming, right? And like, I say that as like, it's funny, right? We can laugh at it, but if that's happening to your body, that's a sign that something's not right there, right? And I had to come to terms with that. And I was like, okay, well, that's not the path. And what I've learned is like, yeah, it might not be the path then, but keep healing. And I've really found this huge connection with all the healings that I do now. I normally feel they're all in my gut area. All of the trauma that I carry, it's like all around in that area, the root, the sacral, the solar plexus. Like I feel it every time something gets activated and I'm processing the energy, it's down in those lower energy centers. So if I'm carrying all of this heavy, dark, whatever you want to call it, energy down there that's disrupting my energy systems, well, what would I feel like, and how would that whole system perform if I wasn't carrying all of that survival energy?
Yeah.
Maybe this is a different conversation, and this is what I'm learning. And over the past, I would say the past like 2 or 3 weeks, I've not been called to really eat meat as much completely. It's funny we're having this podcast right now because I even defrosted some really high quality stuff we get from a regenerative farm a few days ago, and I cooked it and I ate it. And normally when I eat meat, I get this like visceral feeling throughout my body where it goes, thank you. And this time it was kind of like, it was indifferent. And the way that I have perceived that is, it's just where I'm at right now. And never know, maybe next week, as you said earlier, like the body might be asking for something different. But I feel like the more that we do this deep inner work and we heal, our body then starts to align with our soul, because it's not being filtered through all of that wounding, the survival energy that we've been going through for the last 10,000 years, which is the way that I see it, is what led us to eating animals in the first place, is this dip in consciousness into this survival energy. We just got to do what we do to survive. And now we're going through this whole transition of like, oh no, like what are we actually putting in? And maybe if we heal, or collectively, maybe our bodies will start wanting different things. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, this is a really good lesson for me as well, in trying to make sure that I'm last year was a big lesson in the body, in understanding my body and kept reconnecting with my body. And I'm still very much on that journey. It's just at the beginnings. So even you talking about aligning the soul and the body, I'm not there yet. Like, I'm nowhere near, actually. And actually it makes me realize there's still quite a road to travel in getting that aligned, because they do feel like they're in a different zone. My soul's very much like, we're way over here with this, these are the ideals, and my body kind of feels like it's sort of being, I don't know if it's the right way to describe it, so kind of dragged along a little bit of like, come over here this way, but it has other wants right now. So trying to get that aligned feels quite far away. But I think, I agree with you. I think actually it feels right to feel that those parts would be integrated and married together successfully, rather than it be I want this, I want that, that it doesn't. I need to have a bit more of a think on that. I think that's something I definitely want to explore more of, is just that alignment piece. It's something to have a look at.
Yeah, I see it as like, you've got your souls. It's like the ways of oneness, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ultimate goal is harmony, to live in harmony, right? Yeah. But when we're inhabiting this body and we're carrying all this generational trauma and all of this karma that we've accumulated and everything that we've done in this lifetime and lifetimes past, that there's a big difference there. And that's what this work is about. And integrating the ways of oneness, power within, is about marrying that gap and allow it, like seeing all of the energies that we have been carrying, all of the programs that are not who we are, and transforming it. And when that happens, the body goes, I mean, I don't know how you are doing at the moment at nighttime, Emily, but Ellie and I are really, I continuously could sleep for like 10 hours and it feels like my nervous system is being completely transformed on the inside. And Ellie is the opposite, where she cannot sleep at night at the moment. And so I don't know if that, plays into any of this, but I'd love to hear where you're standing with sleep right now.
Yeah, with sleep, I've been pretty lucky. I have a pretty rigorous like sleep routine. So it stayed fairly consistent in terms of me being able to get to sleep easily and stay asleep. But I don't sleep for too long. Like I guess what's too long? Maybe 7.5 hours. It's long enough. It's like a decent amount. And I am usually waking up before my alarm. So yeah, I mean, for me, as long as I am going to bed having done some connection work, for the most part, it's really when I'm asleep that all the stuff kicks off, because I have really quite incredible dreams, which, are they dreams? I don't know. I don't know if they're dreams. They feel really real. So I don't know what's going on with that. I've read all sorts of things about astral travel and connecting with lives that are happening right now that you're also living, and oh gosh, so many other things. So it's a lot goes on when I'm asleep. So, but actually sleep itself, thank God, has been pretty consistent, just because I'm no good without my sleep. No good.
Yeah, I used to sleep so well. I used to sleep anywhere. I could be leaning on a tree and I could sleep. And it's just, it's been a huge struggle for me. I don't know what it is. And it's sucked. And, back to what we were just talking about, my entire life, even when I was eating meat and fish and everything, like I just had severe gut issues. And I'm like Danny, like I hold everything in my gut, all my traumas in there, every program I run is in there, everything is in there. And I think for me, as I'm listening to you guys speaking, like we're all on an individual journey with food. And like when I really tune into my soul's just like, we didn't come here to eat meat. Like we just did not come here to touch animals. Like, and I have not budged from that since 2013. And it's never been even one moment where I'm like, maybe you should consider it, or maybe you should dip back in. Like even the fish thing, like that was really hard for me. And like incorporating that back in, I struggled a lot because I'm just constantly coming from this place of like, this is a living being. And like, we can argue like that's also plants too. Totally. Absolutely. But I just really struggled with the idea of like, man, this thing died in probably not a great way. And here I am. It just kills me. It just completely destroys me. And I just have to honor, like, that's definitely an imprint in my soul. And other people, like when I witness them, they don't seem to feel the way that I do. So I realize, oh, it's a me thing of, you know, my soul clearly came here needing to honor and wanting to honor animals in all the ways that I can. And so that's what I follow. And then knowing what my body was like my entire life, like no matter what I eat, as long, like for me right now, it's a lot of the, Danny and I have been going into the, what's the word, glyphosate? That's like all over like the wheat and things like that, which is really the cause of it. And I thought it was gluten for a while and things like that. So more discoveries, you know, we're learning more and more and more. And I think the moral of the story is that we should just be growing our own food. Period of story.
Yeah. Basically.
Like, basically, that's the only way we're gonna win out here. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with
but
you.
Even that, like the water, you know.
I can talk with you about water. Like so we're obviously mostly focused on food, but it's not the only thing we're putting in our bodies. And you touched on chemicals, you touched on water. I know, Ellie, you're kind of on the chemical front as well in terms of trying to look at what you're putting on your body. You know, I've seen some of your Instagram posts about what am I putting on my body, what's in the products. I'm on that with you. Like that is something that is we're absorbing that, we're taking that in, you know. Water, I have a pretty rigorous protocol, and it has changed for January. So I have noticed my intuition has sharpened, my ability to receive insights and to connect with people when I'm doing healings and various other work as a coach. And I have only changed, other than obviously taking out meat, and this was before the meat, which was a couple of weeks ago now. I only changed water. And obviously it's about 70% of what we are. So it depends on your age, of course, but I distill all of my water, and you want to bet there's some gruesome stuff that comes out the bottom of the distiller when you're putting tap water in. That is quite shocking when you first see that. You know, our water here, Danny, you're from the UK, like everyone raves about the water here, from the men dips, and it's all, no, there's some great stuff in there. There is some serious sludge in that water. And so distilling it, you get all that stuff out. The problem is you get everything out. So there's nothing in it. So we mineralize, try and say that quick, our water. And we also power it up with crystals as well. So there's a set of crystals that we use, that we cleanse regularly, and we use crystals to do that. And we also have a wand. I forget the name of it now, but I can share that with anyone that's interested if need be, where it's got the purest water in the world in it, essentially, long story short. And just contact with your water can share that frequency with the water, because the water is alive. If you follow any of kind of the water experiments, Veda Austin is very big, you know, in water. You can see that water takes on memory, and you know it does take on some of it's around, what's in it, and that goes straight into us. So we do quite a lot to ensure our water is as clean as we can get it, and as plastic free as we can get it too. Because that's also a big, you know, that has all sorts of impacts. You know, it's on the same level as chemicals, I believe, in terms of its impact on the body. So water, we got that down. I think that's made a massive difference to our health and, you know, ability to tune in to all sorts of things. And chemicals, I've been on the glyphosate road for many years. We've been organic for a long time, and it's bloody expensive, but we just learned to eat less. that's the truth, until we could afford to, you know, eat as we would have done beforehand. So organic's been huge for us, and that's in our products too. You know, organic toothpaste, fluoride free toothpaste, making sure that we're just really all over, you know, getting back to as natural as possible, bar actually having our own land to grow food, you know.
So many avenues we could go down there.
Yeah.
And so many things I want to pick your brain on. And you know, Ellie and I have been on a very similar journey. But I'd love to stay, since we're on MSU, on the work topic. And last night, so this is another avenue, is fasting. So Ellie and I have started just eating one meal in the day. And it's been really interesting. And if we don't necessarily eat less, you do end up eating less. You still have a nice, like, good amount of food in that one meal, normally like an hour window. So you're still getting a good amount of food. But what happens is all of your programs just come alive. So like last night, I had a full-on little temper tantrum with my inner child, because he was hungry and he was angry, and I was, you know, guiding. I've been working through this for about 6 months now, doing the one meal. It doesn't always happen. And last night there was a temper tantrum that I went through, and it was, I want to eat, and I could feel him resisting, and I was having to guide him through, you know, it's okay that you don't want to do this, still not going to eat, right? Because it's for your own health. And I was doing the work, you know, actively, and it's really incredible when we do try and create better health for ourselves, all of the programs that show up. And this is the important part where I think a lot of people can get really stuck, because this has been me in the past, of where they'll try and do something positive for their health, but because they don't know how to understand the programs that are driving them to have bad health, or disease, however you want to say it, it keeps people trapped and in these cycles and stuck. And then normally what happens, and this is my case, is you just end up giving up, and you're like, well, that's obviously not for me. When in reality, what's really happening is, no, your programs are showing up and you don't know how to identify them. You don't know how to heal them, is the important part. So you end up just staying completely trapped. So with that being said, like with the veganism and everything that you've just mentioned, what programs have you identified within yourself that you've had to kind of like work through, or you might be working through right now, because this is new for you in terms of the veganism, but from all of these health shifts that you've had to make?
Yeah, there's an overarching theme. Most of them lean into, you can't do this. You know, it's a powerlessness thing for the most part. You can't do this. There is definitely programs of resistance I'm leaning into as well, of not wanting to. I wanna, you know, I don't want to do it. I don't, you know, it's things like, I got enough going on already, you know, and what more do you want of me? That kind of, like, it's those kind of things that keep coming up. It's like, okay, just have to keep meeting those, because, you know, both of those are fairly rigid programs. And they take a bit of time, but certainly for me personally, those kinds of programs take a bit of time to nurture and soften. So they're the major themes. You know, my powerlessness comes through in resistance mostly, and in the victim. You know, like I can't. This is this is too much of an ask. That kind of stuff is real for me. So they're the ones that I've predominantly met. You know, there's the odd one here and there, but I can't say whether or not that's definitely the veganism, or it's I just get triggered all the time. So I know for sure, because we do, but I know for sure that they're the two major themes that are coming off the back of, you know, some of these instructions, these asks of me, including the veganism. And you know, I can see, even talking it through now, there's some I haven't even sat with yet around, like the FOMO, you know, the watching my daughter, my husband enjoying things, even if I don't want it, I'm like, oh, I can't have that. It's like you can't have, because that's some of the programming I hold of, you're not allowed those things when other people are allowed those things. That's okay to have. I have many of those programs because I'm the eldest of 3, and I definitely had a firmer hand, more discipline as the eldest than my younger brother, who's the youngest. You know, there's some of that being stirred up of like, you can have it and I can't. You know, I'm being treated differently and not in a good way, that kind of thing. So I will definitely need to meet some of those. But you know, it's just dealing with what's coming up at the time. So yeah.
That's so interesting, because that's a great question, Danny, because it makes me think like, well, what programs did I have to work through that I'm still working through when I decided to be vegan? And one of those was like, I'd be hanging out with all my friends and everybody eats meat, and then I'm the only one that's vegan. And I would feel like, why do I have to be so different? And why do I have to be the one that's always the outcast? And why do I have to be different? And like feeling like just like a very like immature little child, like stomping her feet. But also what veganism has brought forth for me, which is like, I feel like it's just like the whole theme like lately has been my separation programs. So I have really intense anger, hate, judgment, and superiority programs. And I find myself constantly judging people, like when they eat McDonald's, when they eat Chick-fil-A, when they're eating In-N-Out and things like that. And I always have to check myself. And I worked on it a lot, but I can still feel like when I see that stuff, there's a lot of anger and resentment that I feel towards humans. And then when I come back to myself, it's like, I have to have compassion for everybody, because we live in such a low consciousness level of existence where we are enslaved and where we are just in fucking hell, is how I can put it. And so the best thing that I can do is alchemize those programs when they come up, and then just come from a place. I was telling Danny yesterday, like, I just want to come from a place of like powerful neutrality with everything, and never judge anybody or hate anybody or point my finger at anybody and be like, why are you doing this and doing that and all this stuff. And I'd love to share the story really quickly, but I've been called to go back to the animal shelter, start volunteering and fostering. And I came home one night and I was crying because I was watching these dogs and they're abused and they're neglected, and watching all these people surrender their dogs, and their dogs are like, so like, I don't understand what's going on. And you can see some of the dogs are deteriorating. Like, it's a very high stress environment. And I came home and I was like just in full rage. I was just so angry. I was crying because I was like, how can we do this? Like, how can we treat animals like this? They're so, pure, and all they want is to give you unconditional love, and look what we do, and like, look, and just judging. And as I was doing this, I was putting my old memory card from my camera into my laptop, and all of these videos popped up from like years and years ago when I used to vlog a lot on YouTube. And I randomly clicked on this one video, and it was like this. I guess I didn't know the cameras were rolling, and it was me yelling at my little sister, and I was just projecting all of this anger onto her. Like, she was doing nothing. I was really angry and stressed about what was going on. And I was just talking to her really nasty and talking down to her. And in that moment, I realized the universe just showed me how I show up as this, how I've emitted the same shit as the people who have abused these animals. And it was the way of humility, coming in and be like, hey, what's up? I'm here. And secondly, like, wake up, and like, you judging other people is you saying that you've never done that, that you're separate from that. And there you go again. And so it was very humbling for me. And then sitting with the shame and the guilt and the regret and all of that was, yeah, it was powerful. But also, like, we have to take responsibility in how we contribute to everything that we see out there. And I think there's something to learn for a lot of vegans and even carnivores, because vegans and carnivores, man, they go at it. There's constant battles I see. And it's just hate daggers being thrown at each other. And it's like, we're all a part of the problem. And so how are we going to show up and actually fix the problem? And so for me, it was, let me constantly keep going into this anger and all these separation programs that I have, so that I can leave this world a better place for them, and in turn for all of us.
Yeah. Wow, Ellie, that's amazing. I love, oh my gosh, that was actually, that's deep. I feel that one. And amazing how we're given exactly the right things we need at the right time to learn these lessons, if we're open to just noticing, to connecting that dot and being like, oh right, this is a wake up call. This is a chance for me to feel into all that shame that's been activated and make that connection. It's incredible. I'm always perpetually surprised about like how everything lines up if you're willing and open to just see.
Yep.
You know, and I agree with you. There is a lot of judgment, you know, and that, gosh, it extends way far beyond veganism as well. All the choices in life about what you choose for yourself, or what you might not be conscious of even choosing, and just perpetuating doing the same as has always been done. And I just hope that doing some of this work, you know, and as this spreads and more people become aware of it, there is the questions that people start asking themselves, you know, as they start healing. And then there's other things that come in, you know, this synchronized moments of just like, epiphanies, you know, where someone might just have a question and explore a bit of self-inquiry, you know, to start just questioning, where's that coming from? What does that feel like? You know, what's my part in it? And I guess, yes, there is a huge role for that way of responsibility piece, to just take a breath and have a look at how am I actually showing up, and what might be my role, rather than projecting out onto other people that they're the problem. It's like, well, I only have me, in terms of it's just me being responsible for me. So first look at myself and all the ways that I'm showing up that are less than loving, which is a lot of ways. It's a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, and it's painful. And I think the more work we do, the more I understand this video game. And it's fun when the pieces start coming together and you're like, oh, okay, I just got to play it by these rules. Like Rachel always talks about, just play the rules. And it's like, okay, it's harder than it is just to like, just play the rules, just do it, you know? But I think when those moments come in, you really start to see like what this entire experience is about. And there's just constant little gifts for you to learn, for you to grow, for you to evolve. And so it's beautiful. And I really honor your journey. And I'm going to send you like every like vegan blogger and recipes that I can. And me and Danny will share any recipes with you that we create together. But
please,
I'm excited for you. Yeah, I'm excited for you this year.
Thank you.
To anybody at home, if you're interested in working with Emily one-on-one or joining a group class, any of our mystical life coaches, set up a free consultation with us at mastersofselfuniversity.com. Check out Rachel's book, The 20 Universal Ways of Oneness to Become an Enlightened Being. It is not passive, it is work. And share, subscribe, like, comment. It really helps us do this podcast for free. We love you, Em, so much. Thank you for being here. And until next time, we'll see you guys then. Bye.
Bye.